In a world that constantly demands your attention, your presence, your reactions, it's easy to forget that you're allowed to be selective about where your energy goes. But make no mistake, your peace of mind, your emotional stability, and your inner calm are not things you can afford to compromise for anyone. People who seek to destroy you don't always come with weapons or open threats. Often they come cloaked in familiarity. They wear the mask of friendship, of love, of mentorship, but their words carry a poison that slowly corrodes your self-esteem. What begins as a seemingly harmless comment turns into an echo in your mind, repeating itself, shaking your confidence. They thrive when you doubt yourself. They feel empowered when your energy is scattered, when you're emotionally drained, when you begin to second guess your worth. And that's exactly why protecting your peace is not just a luxury. It's a necessity. You see, your energy is your life force. Every moment you spend doubting yourself because of someone else's manipulation is a moment you're not growing, not thriving, not built. Every time you entertain toxic conversations, defend your choices to those who don't deserve explanations, or tolerate disrespect disguised as a jokes, you're trading pieces of your power for temporary acceptance. And that's a bad deal. You have to start treating your peace like a VIP pass. Not everyone gets access. You have the right to step away from draining conversations. You have the right to stop over-explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You have the right to say no without guilt and to walk away from relationships that no longer feed your soul. Because the truth is, someone who truly cares about you will never find joy in your discomfort. They won't feed off your anxiety or thrive on your weakness. They will protect your energy like it's their own. And until you meet more of those people, protect yourself. Guard your peace like your life depends on it. Because in many ways, it actually does. One of the most subtle yet damaging signs that someone may be working against you is how they react to your highs versus your lows. Pay close attention. It's easy to miss because it often hides behind this fake concern or silence. When you stumble, they show up fast. They're suddenly available, checking in, offering us support. But look a little closer. That support often comes wrapped in subtle smugness. There's a flicker of satisfaction in their eyes, a barely concealed smile, a tone that says, I knew this would happen, even if their words sound kind. And then when you rise, when you win, when you accomplish something you've worked hard for, where are they? Silent, disengaged, distant. They don't repost your announcement. They don't congratulate you with sincerity. If they do acknowledge it, short, forced, or qualified. Must be nice. You always get lucky. Now let's see how long it lasts. That's not support. That's resentment wrapped in sarcasm. You see, someone who wants to destroy you isn't always hostile. Sometimes they're passive. Sometimes they watch from the sidelines. They watch from the sidelines, not to cheer, but to monitor. They need you to fail, not because your failure helps them directly, but because your success threatens their illusion of superiority. Your wins remind them of what they haven't done, and rather than being inspired, they become bitter. These people won't clap when you succeed because they see your light as competition, not inspiration. They view life as a zero-sum game. If you're winning, they must be losing. So instead of evolving, they secretly root for your missteps. They are the first to notice when you're off track, but the last to celebrate when you're back on your feet. The scariest part is that they can be very close to you, colleagues, friends, even family. But proximity doesn't equal loyalty. And not everyone in your circle is in your corner. What you need to understand is this. True allies will be proud of your success even when they're struggling. Real friends clap when you win, even if they're still waiting for their own breakthrough. The ones who can't do that, they were never with you in the first place. They were just near you. So if someone's energy shifts when you shine, don't ignore it. That's not humility on their part. That's hidden hostility. And it's a major red flag. One of the most calculated tactics used by people who want to control or break you is isolation. Not necessarily physical, but emotional and psychological. It doesn't happen all at once. It's slow, subtle, and dangerously strategic. The goal is to separate you from the people who remind you of your worth, your strength, and your truth. It starts with quiet suggestions. Your friends don't really get you. Your family doesn't support you like I do. sounds like concern. They say they're just looking out for you. They say they're being honest because they care. But look at the pattern. Over time, you begin to question your relationships. You stop sharing your joy with others. You start depending solely on them for validation, advice, and emotional connection. And that's exactly what they want. The more isolated you become, the more vulnerable you are to manipulation. When no one else is around to challenge their version of the truth, you begin to accept it as reality. They become the lens through which you see yourself and your life. And that's dangerous because it means they control the narrative. This tactic is especially painful because it corrupts your most sacred connections. It plants seeds of doubt between you and the people who have stood by you. It damages the trust you build with those who truly care. And worst of all, it makes you feel alone, like no one understands you except the very person who's undermining you. Here's what makes it so effective. They isolate you, not through force, but through influence. They don't forbid you from seeing your friends. They just make you feel guilty when they said them against. They don't tell you to stop talking to your family. They just criticize them until you start pulling away on your own. They create an emotional distance without ever raising their voice. That's the difference between obvious toxicity and covert sabotage. This is why it's so important to pay attention to the people who consistently try to come between you and your support system. Because anyone who truly loves you will never want to control who you turn to. They won't feel threatened by your connections. They'll encourage them. They'll be happy that you have a village. But someone who wants to destroy you, they want you to feel like they're the only one who truly understands you. And once they succeed in convincing you of that, they can shape your beliefs, twist your perception, and keep you dependent. Isolation isn't always a locked door. Sometimes it's a whisper in your ear, telling you that everyone else is the enemy, when really the enemy is the one whispering. One of the most deceptive and exhausting things you'll ever experience is dealing with someone who constantly projects their own insecurities onto you. These individuals are not at peace with themselves, so they make sure you aren't at peace either. They don't confront their own fears, doubts, or inadequacies. Instead, they hand them over to you like emotional baggage, expecting you to carry it. You'll recognize this when your confidence becomes a threat. Suddenly, you're arrogant for being proud of yourself. You're too much because you speak your mind. You're intimidating simply for knowing your worth. But the truth is, you're not the problem. Their lack of self-worth is. Your light exposes the shadows they refuse to deal with, so they try to dim you just to feel safe in their own skin. They may mock your dreams, not because your dreams are unrealistic, but because they never had the courage to chase theirs. They call your boundaries as selfish, not because you're being unkind, and because they're used to overstepping limits without accountability. Your refusal to shrink to make them feel comfortable becomes the very thing that triggers them. And it doesn't end there. They'll twist your words, misinterpret your intentions. They'll accuse you of being what they are: jealous, insecure, manipulative, negative. It's a form of emotional warfare where they offload their inner chaos onto you, hoping you'll internalize it and start questioning yourself. Over time, you might find yourself apologizing for things you didn't do, feeling guilty for taking up space, or trying to fix parts of yourself that were never broken. That's the power of projection. It doesn't just distort how they see you. It starts to warp how you see yourself. What makes this even more dangerous is that projection often comes from people who are close to you. Friends, partners, even mentors, people whose opinions you once valued. And when they constantly reflect their own inadequacies back at you, it can feel like you're under attack for simply being who you are. But don't let their wounded self-image become the mirror used to judge yourself. Here's what you must remember. When someone calls you too ambitious, it often means they've given up on their own goals. When they label you difficult, it usually means you won't tolerate being mistreated. When they say you've changed, it often means you stopped accepting their nonsense. Their projections are not your truth. Their insecurities are not your burden to carry. You are not responsible for someone else's lack of healing. You are not obligated to stay small so they can feel secure. You don't have to explain your shine to people who are committed to living in the dark. Among the most dangerous forms of emotional manipulation is gaslighting, a psychological tactic used by people who want to destabilize your sense of truth and reality. When someone wants to destroy you, they often won't attack you with obvious cruelty. Instead, they erode your confidence from the inside out until you begin to question your own memory, instincts, and perception. It often begins in small ways. You bring up something they said that hurt you, and instead of acknowledging it, they say, I never said that. You express how something made you feel, and they respond with, you're too sensitive or you're imagining things. When this happens once or twice, you might brush it off. But when it becomes a pattern, you start second guessing yourself. Was I overreacting? Did I remember it wrong? Am I too emotional? This is exactly what they want. Gaslighters don't want to win an argument. They want to make you feel like there was never an argument to begin with. They want to rewrite history, bend facts, and control the narrative until you're unsure of what's real and what's not. Over time, you become so disoriented that you start relying on them for your version of the truth. You give up your inner compass because it seems more stable. But that stability is an illusion built on manipulation. This is not just confusing, it's deeply damaging. Doubting your own reality chips away at your self-trust, and without self-trust, you become easily controlled. You hesitate to speak up, to take action, to believe in yourself. You become more compliant, more dependent, more quiet. And for someone who wants to destroy your confidence, that silence is their victory. What makes this form of manipulation especially cruel is that it often comes dressed as concern. They don't just deny your truth. They position themselves as the illogical or irrational one. They might say, I'm just trying to help you see things clearly, or you always get so emotional. I'm just being honest. But honesty that invalidates your experience isn't honesty. It's control in disguise. True connection doesn't require you to abandon your reality. Healthy people don't need you to question your memory to make themselves comfortable. They listen. They consider your perspective. They respect your emotions even if they don't fully understand them. But someone who wants to control or diminish you will intentionally distort your clarity. Because when you no longer trust yourself, they can step in and tell you who you are, what happened, and what you should believe. And once they have that level of influence over your mind, they don't need to control your body. You'll start doing that for them. So when someone repeatedly makes you feel like your feelings are wrong, your memories are flawed, or your instincts can't be trusted, it's not just a disagreement, it's a warning sign. That person is not looking for resolution. They're looking for domination of your inner world. Manipulation isn't always loud. It doesn't always look like control or sound like cruelty. Sometimes it comes softly draped in flattery, wrapped in charm, or disguised as advice. That's what makes it so dangerous. Because while you're busy trying to maintain peace, explain yourself, or be kind, someone else might be busy rewriting the rules of the relationship in their favor. The first step toward reclaiming your power is recognizing that manipulation is real and that it doesn't only happen to the weak or unaware. It happens to strong, intelligent, empathetic people too. Why? Because manipulators prey on your strengths. They exploit your compassion. They twist your loyalty. They test the limits of your patience. They take your best traits and use them against you. One of the most common manipulative tactics is guilt tripping. You say no to something you're uncomfortable with, and suddenly you're cold or selfish. You stand up for yourself, and now you're too aggressive or disrespectful. Manipulators know that if they can make you feel bad for having boundaries, they can eventually get you to abandon them. Then there's gaslighting, where they chip away at your trust in your own judgment, or emotional baiting, where they provoke you, then act calm so they can paint you as the irrational one. They deflect responsibility, they twist facts, they shift blame. And all of it is designed to confuse, exhaust, and control you. But here's the turning point. The moment you start noticing it, the power dynamic begins to shift. Recognition is the gateway to freedom. When you can see the pattern, when you stop taking their words at face value and start observing their behavior for what it truly is, you become harder to manipulate. You stop internalizing the lies. You stop shrinking yourself just to avoid conflict. You begin to trust your gut instead of silencing it to keep the peace. And no, it doesn't mean the manipulation stops instantly, but your reaction changes. And that's where your strength lies. You no longer absorb their narcissity as truth. You no longer bend to keep their ego intact. You start asking hard questions. You start saying a no without long explanations. You begin to put your emotional well-being ahead of their approval. Recognizing manipulation doesn't mean you now live in suspicion or become bitter. It means you become awake. You become clear-eyed about who deserves access to your inner world. You stop being a person who explains your boundaries and start being a person who enforces them. Because the person who wants to destroy you often doesn't need to raise their voice. They just need you to keep second-guessing yourself. But once you start recognizing the game they lose, there are people who feel threatened not by your mistakes, but by your potential. They don't fear your failures. They celebrate them in silence. What they fear is your growth, your evolution, and your ability to outgrow the version of yourself they could once control or overshadow. Because once you start expanding, once your voice gets louder and your confidence becomes visible, they lose their grip on you, and that terrifies them. People who want to diminish you don't always say it don't grow. They say things like, are you sure that's realistic? Or maybe you should stick to what you're already doing. And not everyone needs to shine that bright. These statements don't sound like attacks. They sound like concern. They're crafted to make you pause, to doubt, to hesitate. And hesitation is what they're after. Because as long as you're hesitating, you're not moving forward. As long as you're questioning yourself, you're not taking up space and you're not showing up fully. You're not becoming too visible, too confident, too unmanageable for them. Silence is the fuel of manipulation. When you stop speaking up, when you stop setting boundaries, when you shrink yourself to fit their comfort zone, they thrive. Because in that silence, they don't have to confront your truth. They don't have to acknowledge your power. They don't have to deal with the fact that you are outgrowing the version of you they thought they could control. And it's important to understand this is rarely about you personally. It's about what you represent. You represent the courage they wish they had, the voice they silenced long ago, the dream they abandoned, the boundaries they never learned to set. So they try to keep you small, not because you are wrong, but because your expansion reminds them of their own stagnation. This is why people who want to destroy you often try to convince you that humility means invisibility. That confidence is arrogance. That being proud of yourself is selfish. But that's not humility. That's suppression. Real humility isn't about staying silent to make others comfortable. It's about knowing your worth without needing to prove it and still choosing to rise. They want you to believe that your power is dangerous, that your presence is too much, that your voice is disruptive. But what's truly disruptive to them isn't your voice. It's your awakening. It's your refusal to stay quiet when something feels wrong. It's your decision to stop apologizing for existing fully, loudly, unapologetically. And once you stop playing small, once you step into your truth and use your voice without flinching, they can't control you anymore. Because silence is where they hold power. But your voice, that's where you begin to take it back. Got healthy relationships, whether they're romantic, platonic, or professional, are built on mutual respect, support, and understanding. They're based on give and take, yes, but that giving and taking should flow naturally, without debt, without keeping receipt. But when you're dealing with someone who secretly wants to control, manipulate, or even destroy your sense of self-worth, you'll notice a very different pattern. They always keep score. These individuals operate like emotional accountants. Every act of kindness they perform comes with a silent price tag. Every favor is filed away like a transaction. And later, often when it's most convenient for them, they pull out that emotional ledger and say things like, after everything I've done for you, oh, you owe me. Don't forget who was there for you when no one else was. These aren't reminders. They're emotional weapons. They're used to guilt you into compliance, to manipulate your decisions, to force loyalty. In their world, relationships are not about care or connection. They're about leverage power, control. And when you try to assert your own needs or boundaries, they reach into that mental ledger and hold their contributions over your head like proof that you're ungrateful or selfish for wanting more. What's even more dangerous is how subtle it can be. It doesn't always sound aggressive. Sometimes it comes across as martyrdom. They make themselves seem like the ever-sacrificing figure, always giving, never receiving, and you're cast as the taker, the inconsiderate one, the person who never does enough. But if you step back and look clearly, you'll realize that their giving was never unconditional. It was calculated. It was an investment made only to be cashed in later. This scorekeeping doesn't just create guilt. It breeds fear. You begin to hesitate before asking for help, worried it'll be added to your debt. You start overgiving, not out of love, but out of obligation. You say yes when you mean no, not because you want to, but because you're afraid of being accused of being ungrateful or disloyal. Slowly, you lose your sense of equality in the relationship. You're not standing beside them anymore. You're beneath them, indebted, trying to earn your right to stay. And that's exactly how they like it. Because when someone wants to destroy your sense of autonomy, they don't need to use force. They just need to convince you that you owe them, that you wouldn't be where you are without them, that your voice, your boundaries, and your independence are things you haven't earned yet. But that's not love. That's not love. That's not friendship. That's not leadership. That's control wearing the mask of care. In real connection, no one keeps score. There's no invisible scoreboard. There's no emotional invoice being prepared for the day you finally say a no. In real connection, people give because they want to, not because they expect repayment. They support you not to gain leverage, but because they genuinely care about your well-being. Sabotage doesn't always look like a direct attack. In fact, the most effective sabotage is often the quietest, so understated that you question whether it's even happening at all. When someone wants to destroy your sense of confidence, they don't necessarily insult you outright. Instead, they chip away at your self-worth little by little under the guise of concern, honesty, or constructive criticism. They may say things like, "Are you sure that's a good idea?" "Well, you're not really cut out for that kind of thing. I just don't want to see you get hurt." Now, that's not really your strength, is it? Each of these comments might not seem damaging, but over time they accumulate. They begin to shape the narrative you carry about yourself. You start second guessing your ideas, minimizing your talents, playing small in rooms you were born to stand tall in. And that's exactly their goal, to create just enough doubt that you begin to sabotage yourself, saving them the trouble. This type of person knows they can't openly tell you, "You're too powerful." So instead, they use backhanded compliments to confuse you. They praise you with qualifiers. "You did great for someone with your experience. You look nice today. Did you do something different?" "You're actually smarter than I thought." These aren't compliments. They're subtle digs wrapped in politeness. And their true purpose is to create cracks in your confidence, tiny fractures in your belief in yourself that they can widen over time. Because a confident person is hard to control. But someone who constantly doubts themselves, someone who feels like an imposter in their own success, that person is far easier to manipulate. They'll also downplay your achievements in front of others. If you share good news, they might respond with a dismissive, "must be nice," or quickly shift the focus back to themselves. They might ignore your wins altogether, making you feel like you're bragging just for being proud of yourself. Over time, you learn to keep your success to yourself. You shrink your joy. You stop celebrating the parts of you that shine, and that's the moment they begin to win. Because here's the truth. People who want to destroy your confidence often do so quietly. They know that if they came at you directly, you defend yourself. Lie. So instead, they plant seeds of doubt. They wait for you to water them. They let your own thoughts do the work. And eventually, if you're not careful, you'll be the one holding yourself back, while they sit back and say, "See, I told you so." Real supporters don't make you feel small when you dream big. They don't question your abilities every time you rise. They celebrate your growth. They speak life into your potential. They don't whisper doubts. They shout encouragement. One of the most damaging things someone can do when they want to destroy your sense of self is to make you feel guilty or crazy for setting boundaries. Boundaries are not just personal limits. They are a reflection of your self-respect, your understanding of your needs, and your emotional well-being. Healthy boundaries are essential for maintaining your identity and preserving your peace. However, for someone who thrives on manipulation, boundaries are a threat. They view them as obstacles to control, and they will do anything to make you feel that enforcing them is unreasonable, selfish, or irrational. They might respond to your boundaries by making you feel like you're being overly dramatic. You're taking this too seriously. Or why are you making such a big deal out of this? Or calm down, I was just joking. Or too sensitive, it's not like I did anything wrong. At first, you might start to doubt yourself. Maybe you are being too sensitive. Maybe your requests are too much. But the reality is that this isn't about how unreasonable you are. It's about how unreasonable they want you to feel so they can push you past your limits. They want you to question your instincts and disregard the boundaries you've set to protect your emotional and mental health. What makes this so insidious is that it often comes with gaslighting, where they twist the truth or deny your reality in such a way that you begin to feel like you're the problem. For example, you might calmly ask for some space, and they might retort with, "You never want to spend time with me anymore," or "I guess I'm just not important enough for you." Instead of respecting your need for space, they make you feel like your request is unreasonable or unloving. Over time, you begin to feel as though setting boundaries is somehow a body or a wrong. You start believing that your needs are trivial and that the only way to maintain peace in the relationship is to continually suppress your own desires and comfort. This creates a toxic cycle where they continue to demand more from you, and you keep sacrificing your own well-being to keep the peace, eventually losing yourself in the process. The underlying message they send is clear. Your needs don't matter, only theirs do. Your peace isn't as important as their comfort, and as long as you continue to let them push, pride, and violate your boundaries without consequence, they gain power over you. They gain control over your time, your mental health. Healthy relationships are built on mutual respect for each other's boundaries. They require a willingness to listen, to understand, and to honor one another's personal limits. But when someone wants to destroy you, they disregard your boundaries because they know that once they break down your defenses, they can manipulate you more easily. In this situation, the most important thing you can do is stand firm in your boundaries. They are not negotiable. They are not an invitation for argument. They are a direct expression of your self-respect. And anyone who truly cares for you will respect them without trying to twist or manipulate them. The moment you allow someone to make you feel crazy for protecting yourself, you give them permission to cross the line again and again. In conclusion, recognizing the signs of someone who wants to destroy your sense of self is the first step toward reclaiming your power and protecting your peace. It's important to understand that these tactics, manipulation, gaslighting, and emotional sabotage, are not your fault. They are strategies used by individuals who seek to control or diminish others in order to feel superior or secure in their own sense of self-worth. But you don't have to accept this. Remember, you are not here to play small, to second-guess your reality, or to give up your dreams for someone else's comfort. You have the right to set boundaries to pursue your goals and to surround yourself with people who lift you up rather than drag you down. The journey to reclaiming your confidence may be difficult at times, but it's worth it. Every step you take toward recognizing these toxic behaviors and standing firm in your truth is a step toward empowerment. You are not meant to be controlled, diminished, or manipulated. Your worth is not up for debate. So trust yourself, honor your boundaries, and surround yourself with people who celebrate your growth. Protect your peace, protect your energy, and never allow anyone to make you feel small for being exactly who you are. You deserve to be seen, to be heard, and to take up space in this world